Game begin.
What's going on with me? It's getting thinner and
Did
thinner.
you just check your hair?
Yeah, like I used to have like thick, luxurious hair. Just like, it's like Father Time N, Human Race O.
All right. And with that, welcome to the Spy Colony podcast.
We have a name now.
Yeah, we have a name now. We are the Spy Colony here podcast. I'm here with the drunken prince of Premodern, Flint Espil, as well as carbohydrate-free Michael J. Flores. Flint, in your honor, this one's for you.
Oh, there it is. There it is. I appreciate that. That was the beer of the tournament for me.
Modelo. Shout out
Yeah,
Modelo Especial.
Modelo. Yeah,
I'd
every
love to
round.
catch a sponsor.
I heard, so how many people played on day one? 186, right? One short of 187.
Something like that, yeah.
How many beers is in a case of beer?
24, is that a case, I think?
They sold 61 cases on day one.
Wow.
So, what's the math on that?
Yeah, it's full
61
calculator.
times 24, right?
61 times 10. 20.
Times
And
20.
some of us just drank, gin and tonic.
So that's 1,464 divided by what? There's no. That's crazy. That's like an average of. That's on the order of 10 beers a person, right? Like,
Yeah, but the old school crew was there as well, doing X Point.
oh, okay, yeah. So there was another 60 people there. Okay, okay. I'm like, this is insane because
Yeah.
because the whole point is that the Dante Alighieri Society broke their single day sales record on Saturday at 61 cases of beer, and then they broke it. I'm sorry, on Friday, and then they broke it again on Saturday. So.
Yeah. The old school guys were not going to get one-upped by us on the drinking front.
Apparently not. But I mean, I was just like, how many beers are in a case? I mean, that's so I mean, even at 240, that's still like 6 beers a person, and like I didn't drink at all. Itai didn't drink. That's
I think I heard Jens had like 20 beers or something on Saturday. Jens Jaeger.
well, his
German.
name is Jaeger.
Yeah, he's. It's just a typical Saturday. Pardon my stereotypes.
Listen, we don't endorse that amount of drinking, but it was incredible to witness.
It's not up to me to endorse or not endorse anything. I'm just talking about maths.
I'm just talking about, we do endorse counting and math.
Yeah, I'm just asking questions and crunching numbers.
Flint, you were responsible for at least 2 of those cases, though, between you and your opponents, though.
Yeah, I definitely had a different vibe this year compared to last year. Last year, I was completely sober until the quarterfinals, where I think I, drank half of a beer while my hands were shaking, and then finished that beer,
Wait.
right before the finals.
Are you trying to lead the audience to believe that you were nervous during last year's top 8?
I was nervous. I never played in like a top 8 before like that.
Annihilated me.
Yeah, that went pretty well.
Let's go. Let's for the listeners. Let's remind everyone. Flint, can you just recap your last year, really fast, and how that kind of differed from this year? Because there's a lot of interesting points, like how, your preparation, the amount of seriousness, and just like your overall attitude.
Yeah, last year the TLDR was Hoyp and me and a couple others were trying to decide which decks to play, and eventually Mike Arnold was like, just play whatever decks you're comfortable with and enjoy playing. And I was like, well, I love, Hermit Knot. I love that deck. I played it a lot in the monthlies, and I had fine-tuned it and was like, all right, I'm just going to run this. And no one's running Tormod's Crypts, and I think that I could have a shot at the top 8 with this deck at the tournament. I'll crush the slime matchups, and I'll kind of do my thing. And it went really well. I only had 1 loss in the Swiss. It's just, who was that to? Who beat me in the Swiss?
I don't know, an idiot who was casting 4 casting cost sorcery speed spells one at a time is I think
that's-
how he was
checks out.
described at the meetup last night. So, at the meetup last night, someone else was just like, Premodern this year is completely different than Premodern last year. Last year, an idiot could come in and cast 4 casting cost spells one at a time and go undefeated in the Swiss. This year, if you have a second turn 12-12 in play, your chances of winning the game are about 40%.
Mike, of course, downplaying his impressive resume. He's not an idiot. You can just look up his accomplishments.
Definitely.
Ask Tom Metelsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say a magic hero for many of us, myself included. I remember, Mike and I met at the beginning of the tournament last year, and I was like so excited to finally meet him. And he was just like, what do you want? And I'm like, I'm just going to tell him what I'm on in case I play him. And I was like, I'm playing this, like, it's just so cool to meet you. I was like starstruck. And then we actually got to play. And Mike did beat me in the Swiss. He was my only loss. And then I made it to the top 8 and swept the top 8. Made, I think, one play mistake the tournament. I played really tight, played really well, and managed to take it down against Ricochet in the finals. But I was nervous. Didn't play in big tournaments growing up. Was always kind of a big fish in a small pond. And I was really doing it. And I was excited and I was nervous. And I felt like maybe there was some pressure on me because people knew me from the monthlies as well. And so I was like, I got to do this. And so
you're one of the most decorated monthly players, right, Flint?
Yeah, but when I started playing the monthlies, it was like 20 people, and people
now
were
it's like 200.
Pross Bloom decks with Veteran Explorer, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you bring a Sly deck, or a Landstill deck to that fight, and it's pretty straightforward. But it went well, and I won. And this time around, I wanted to be a little more relaxed. I wanted to play something that wasn't going to take what I thought would be a lot of thinking. I was kind of wrong about that in some ways. In some of the matchups, I actually had to do a fair amount of thinking. But I'm also the kind of person who likes to plan ahead a lot. So, going into last year, I kind of knew what my lines would be against various decks. And we can get into the weeds with the Fluctuator deck as well, but thought a lot about what my lines were going to be in a lot of these matchups. And I was like, okay, after starting round 2, I'm going to have a beer, and I'm going to have a beer every round, and I'm going to take it easy. And if I go 4-4, with this meme of a deck, that'll be great. And then the meme kind of grew from that idea and so on and so forth. And that's kind of, what happened in terms of the philosophy behind why I decided to play what I ended up playing.
Right. So when you started to not ever lose, was there a shift for you, or did you just continue to stay in your relaxed and slightly drunk state?
So there was a moment. There was definitely like that bridge, that I came to, and I was like, this is going better than I expected.
He can't keep getting away with this.
Did you really think it was going better than you expected? So let's just backtrack like 6 months or something. I made an ill-laid bet against Flint that I lost. And so, meant to be that Flint was going to pick my deck for Lobstercon. He's just like, well, what deck are you going to play? So we'll play the same deck. So then, Lanny's my primary playtest partner. He's just, Flint really should give you the deck to play so that you can get some reps in beforehand. And then Flint's just sending me memes, like Masters of the Universe memes, like that just say, I have the power, right? And so eventually he sends me this deck, right? And I actually looked at this, I'm like, this is a serious deck, right? Like this is, Aaron Dix played Fluctuator as one of his 3 decks in the PSS. I actually fell in love with it when I saw it. Like one of the first times we played IRL, Lanny, right? You did that video of me fluctuating you out, and it was great fun. But Flint's deck, we'll let Flint talk about the construction. It's like is so beautifully built, right? I mean, I look at this and I just like, if this can be improved, it would not be improved by me, right? It's so, I mean, whatever. I have 3 expunges in my main deck instead of your 1 Gildalight, but that's because we discussed it. Meddling Mage is a dangerous card, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but like other than a tiny tweak like that, right? Like this deck is so beautifully built, and I don't know, like every aspect of it reinforces every other aspect of it. And like, even when you get in some of the stories of some of the matches you had, the capabilities of the deck are far beyond like sort of the easy mode. Durf, I had a second turn blasted landscape. You're dead, right? It's just not that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick for the viewers, let's go ahead and explain the deck. Take it away.
So I like to think of it in some ways as magic as Richard Garfield intended, but because you win with a drain life, right? Drain life.
I agree.
In the original sets, it's like you just don't see it in Premodern, right? Nobody's drain life in for the win for like 20 or more. which is also part of the appeal to running the deck itself. And certainly use the Songs of the Damned to do it. Ice Age, right, 1 black mana. Used to be an interrupt back in the day. Now it's an instant. I wish it was still an interrupt or even a mana source. That would be amazing.
Then you can't counter an interrupt,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
But like there was the period where Dark Ritual actually said mana source on it, right? And so you just can't interact with it. But anyway, story is Songs of the Damned, 1 black mana, instant, add 1 black mana for each creature in your graveyard. And so the deck uses Fluctuator to cycle through tons of cards. Everything in the deck has cycling except for the 4 Fluctuators, the Songs of the Damned, and the Drain Life, right, in the main deck. But every other card has cycling. And so if you have...
Technically not the Dromar's Cavern.
Well, yeah, right? But it replaces itself, if we want to get in the weeds, right? You went on turn 3, you play your second land on turn 2 and you just pass. You untap, you have 2 mana available, you cast your Fluctuator, and then you go off. You eventually cycle into your Dromar's Cavern, which you play to bounce one of your cycling lands, so it replaces itself as a cycling card, and you can essentially draw your whole deck mathematically if you have at least 6 cyclers in your hand when the turn starts. You can still win with 5 cards in your hand, and if you get super lucky, you could do it with 4, but 6 is a guaranteed kill. And you drop your Dromar's Cavern, you bounce your land, tap for black mana, you cast the Songs of the Damned, and you drain life, and you win the way Garfield intended.
So just some things on that about like potentially being able to win on 4, but definitely being able to win on 6 cards. So one of the things that was impressive about this deck versus previous pre-modern Fluctuator decks I'd seen was that you had removed Lotus Petal and then like a secondary kill card from the main deck, which just changed, what your certainty of winning is, right? You just made it more certain by 2 cards. And in exchange, you gave up the capability of winning on turn 2, right? That's really the...
Yeah, and I full disclosure and full credit here. I really need to give to Danny DeRoy. I think I'm saying your last name correct, Danny. He pronounced it for me just the other day again. But Dutch player, renowned Elves player. Like he was in top 8 of Euro Champs last year on Elves. Just he can run a clinic on it along with Ole. Like just such a good player. And he's the one who suggested I play the deck to begin with, and we started with his list. He's been working with his friend Hugo and another one of their friends who's a mathematician to like really dial in Fluctuator. And so he showed me a list that was very similar to sort of the final version, like almost card for card, with just some minor tweaks that I made based on what I thought the metagame was going to be. And so they figured all of that out, right? And he and I talked about it a lot, and I discussed different lines with him and different ideas with him. And so I didn't really play test it, but I did a lot of just like it's not really theory crafting, but just had a lot of discussions. I think I goldfished it 10 times and was like, all right, I think I need 6 cards, and then confirmed it mathematically with Danny. And then I literally play tested 4 games, not matches, but 4 games. I played 2 games against Blue White Landstill just to make sure the sideboard plan would work. And then I played 2 games against Mono Blue Dreadnought just to confirm that I cannot win that matchup. And that was really it.
But your deck is insane against a wide swath of the field, right? Like almost automatic against Elves, almost automatic against Red deck, and there's almost nothing they can do about it, right? Like even after sideboarding, right? I was discussing this with BK, and he's like, well, what if somebody has a Tormod script? And it's like, when are you going to use the Tormod script? Like, when they cast Songs of the Damned. It's like, you just let them draw their entire library. You don't think they have a second Songs of the Damned? Look, you get to have a Tormod script, but they don't have a second Songs of the Damned, but they saw 60 cards. He's just like, yeah, like I guess you can't win.
Yeah, it's just insane how good it is in some matchups. The deck, the only way you lose is when the deck beats itself. So in one of my slime matchups, for example, I think my only slime matchup, I lost one of the games because I had to mull, and I couldn't find a Fluctuator. And then I finally found one at 4, but he had too much of a clock. I couldn't amass enough cyclers in my hand to actually win. So I think I won 2-1, but I'm old. And then in a Goblins against Goblins in one of the rounds, same thing happened. I beat him game 1. Game 2, we had a crazy result where he top decked the 1 card he needed to win. But then in game 3, I had to mull. And he's over there, he's nervous, and he's like, oh God, this deck, what am I going to do? And I'm like, man, at this point, like, you've probably already won, but we'll play it out. And I kept a hand of 4, and I still almost got him. And so that was my one loss in the Swiss, was actually to Goblins, where the deck kind of beat itself. But if you keep a hand of 5, 6, or 7 cards, and you have a Fluctuator in your opening hand, and their only interaction is like a Naturalize or a Disenchant, you're sitting pretty. I mean, you're probably going to win that game.
As long as they're not on
I was playing a feature match last night.
Yeah, as long as they're not playing Dreadnought.
Yeah. As long as they're not, I'm saying against like a Sly deck or an Elves deck.
I was playing a feature match last night, and I was sitting next to Lanny, and Lanny was playing against a surprise guest to our meetup. And Lanny knew what he was playing, and Lanny showed me his hand, and he says, I have a guaranteed turn 3 kill, but he won the roll. So
my opponent won the roll. So I had a mulligan. I was playing Phyrexian Devourer combo, and I opened up my hand, and it's got it all. It has Alter Tinker and an artifact, but no Soul Land. Or no, it was even better, because I added the recently unbanned, or not so recent anymore, Show and Tell tech. So it was Alter, Show and Tell, Devourer, and I just didn't have the Soul Land. And my opponent, special guest, Mike, graciously handed him Fluctuator, and I was like, I'm on the draw, and I have to mulligan. I have to mulligan a turn 3 kill, because he kept 7. Like, my opponent was just literally like, I have a Fluctuator. That was like, great.
So our special guest was Pro Tour champion Osip Levodovich. And so after Lobstercon, he was just like asking, hashtag Kibler Google, aka Twitter, was there any websites that he could read about Premodern or anything? And so he's a good friend of mine, right? And I tried to get him to Premodern last year, right before Lobstercon. And so he's like, actually, can I come to the meetup? That was his, and I'm like, yeah, of course you can come. But he doesn't have a deck, right? So I can make you any deck. And he's like, well, what deck should I play? And I said, why? Well, there's a deck that we can give you that would both honor your win with the cycling deck and also like recognize your, Grand Prix Boston top 8 with a Cloud of Fairies combo deck. He's like, sounds great. So I just sent him the screenshot of your deck. And I said, do you understand how this works? And then we never discussed it. He claimed he understood how it worked.
Did you tell him that it was something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue?
No, I didn't. I sent him the screenshot, and I said, I have this built, right? Because I had it built for the, for the bet. And I'll just hand it to you, but as long as you understand how it works. And he's a Pro Tour champion. Understand how a combo deck works. But he was super jazzed at the meetup, and he eventually won the meetup, and he repped your Fluctuatrix real good.
Minus the beers.
Beers.
Do they have beers at that store?
They don't have that beers at that store. I don't think they have that liquor license. But it was amazing watching him work, because when he played against me in game 2, he was like, oh man, I could have won on turn 2. Like, he figured, like, not only was he new to the deck, he like was already figuring like out the like intermediate advanced level lines.
He put it in the pedal against you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that's correct.
He had the pedal in his hand, but he drew Blasted Landscape on the second turn, so he just played Fluctuator with the Blasted Landscape. As soon as he did, he said, oh, I effed up. And, I was walking me through later, he's like, no, I should have just cast it with the pedal, right? Because he also knew his last card in his deck was the Drain Life, because he had mulled it.
He had bottomed it. He'd Londoned
So
it.
he's just like, I actually have the kill if I cast this with the pedal. All right. Like, and because obviously the difference is that he would need the Dromar's Cavern bounce to get to the last card. He needed to
preserve his land drop for that turn, use the pedal instead. So he had the God draw, and he was like, he just didn't process that, but he figured it out immediately after.
But the best thing was, he said, this was like what do you say? Like, this is my second game with the deck. He's just like, if it were my third game, I would never make that mistake.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so insane.
In case you're wondering if people who are demonstrably good at Magic are good at Magic, they are.
But yeah, it was really awesome, because, to see like a really good player come into the format, and then just like, take down. I think maybe that was like one of our biggest meetups ever at 21 people, but This
amongst the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to
Espil cast, but just recognize how gassy your deck was. It won in somebody else's hands 1 week later.
That's right. I got a message from Mike Arnold this morning, and it was a screenshot of your Twitter post or whatever, and it's just like, what have you done?
Yeah, watch out. I'd start packing those meddling mages, etc. I want to, and your stabilizers. I mean, it's a free roll, right? Just have a few stabilizers. It's good against Rifter.
There you go.
Is it? I can tap mana. You take 2, buddy. Pew pew.
No. Wait, stabilizer is players can't cycle cards.
Oh, I thought you meant Fluctuator was good against her. It is good against her. Fluctuator would kill Rifter. I could tap 1 and just take 2. And
no,
you just tap 1 and I take 2.
Mike, I'm saying the card's stable. I told our audience to start packing stabilizers for their sideboard. And if your first response is, but there's only one person who's going to be playing Fluctuator, it also is good against Rifter.
So, of the people who are drinking a lot, it will take out both Flint Espil and Jens Jaeger.
That's correct.
So, it will take out both the 2022 North American Premodern champion and I don't know what the name of it. Jens has this ridiculous title. It's like the equivalent of like the European Championship, right? But it's not the European Championship because that's a different title.
Right, something of the sort. But I want to circle back because this is actually, I got to be honest, this is kind of a sticking point to me. Flint, I feel like you did not uphold the spirit of the bet by truly forcing Michael J to make the right decision and play your deck. Can you please, because people don't actually know this, can you please explain how the bet ended up resolving and how, for some reason, Michael J. Flores ended up sleeving up Landstill for the 2023 North American Premodern Champs?
Yeah, so the bet had to do with his win rate on the decks that he chose for for the PSS. I thought his Stasis deck was not good. And
it was not good.
And he cut this Hermit Knot deck for it, and I was very sad about it. And so I was like, all right, listen, I will bet you don't win like a single match with the Stasis deck, and you only win like a certain percentage with your red-white deck. And he was like, oh yeah, or what? And I think you were out at like a cabaret show or something. Probably.
I was hanging out with Miranda.
Well, we were texting. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And
shout out to Miranda.
Yeah, hi Miranda. We got to meet actually when I was there. But no, so I was like, all right, if I win the bet, and all you have to do is win like a single game with your single match for your Stasis deck, then if I win, then I get to pick your Lobstercon deck. But if you win, you can pick my deck, right? And I wasn't really sure what I was going to play anyway. And I was like, Michael playtests a lot. So it's kind of a win-win for me either way. Because I was like really busy at the time and had some other things going on professionally and personally. And so I was like, I'm just not going to have a lot of time for Premodern. And so Mike took the bet and lost. And so I got to pick his deck. And I still didn't know what I was going to play. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, just going back to what my thoughts earlier, like Mike has been playtesting with Landy and everyone, like they play all the time. I'm not playing that much. Like they're going to know what's good. I'm going to feel real bad if like I pick a deck and Mike doesn't do well with it. Right. And not that you wouldn't have play tested or like worked out whatever kinks, like I'm sure that would have happened. And back when I decided I was going to play Fluctuator, I was playing in this like Saturday meetup. It was like Saturday morning for me and like Saturday night for the guys over in Europe or something. But I just played in this like webcam meetup on one day. And Danny was on Elves and I was playing Devour. Actually, I was playing a 5-color Oath Devourer deck that I shared with Mike a while ago. That is probably the scariest, fastest deck in the format with no disruption. Because you do just insane things like a turn 1 Oath into a turn 2, show and tell, or a turn 1, alter into a turn 2 show and tell. It runs like two or three show and tells. It runs 4 oaths. It just destroys creature decks. Like it's.
I wasn't sure why you didn't play it when you went to that California championship in Los Angeles. I thought you were going to play that. You top 8'd, right? But you played Goblins.
Yeah, the reason I didn't play it is because I didn't want to spoil it yet. I wanted.
He was hiding tech.
Yeah. And then I played it when I came to New York because I was like, I got to test this out. And I got to test it in an environment that's decent. And I don't think that like I'm going to be playing people who are going to be paying that much attention here other than you, like Flores, who already knew about the deck anyway. And I just got I went like 1 and 2. I played against 2 blue decks, and a little bit of disruption just wrecks that strategy because you don't have impulse, you don't have the cantrips, you don't have the cards to dig that you have in the blue-red version. And I was just like, it was so disheartening. And so the one deck that I thought I was going to play at Lobstercon, I just kind of scrapped at that point. And so I'm having this conversation with Danny, circling back to what I was saying earlier on the Saturday, like online meetup. And I was just like, I don't know what I want to play. I kind of want to like have more fun this year. I want to drink more. I want to actually drink beer. I want to be more relaxed. I don't want to put pressure on myself. Not that I have to do that, but I just do. And, but I want to do something kind of fun and out there. And he's like, we should play Fluctuator. And I was like, what, really? Like, I know the deck is good and it can do powerful things, but there's probably going to be a lot more blue there this year. And he's like, oh, well, we should talk because we got tech. And so we spent, our match ended quickly because I destroyed him on Alps with that Devourer deck because I got Oath. And we spent the next like 45 minutes just talking about the deck. And I was like, wow, that's actually pretty solid. I'm going to think about it. And so I thought about it for a while and I had some more conversations with him. And then I decided I was going to do it. I was like, okay, I'm going to play this deck. It's kind of a meme. It does have game against land still, but there's all these Dreadnought decks that are probably going to be there. And I don't think I can beat a Dreadnought deck. And at that point, I shared it with you, Mike, because you were like, I want to play whatever deck you want to play. And I was like, well, here you go, man. What do you think? And you were more stoked you were skeptical, but you were more excited than I thought you were going to be. Like, I was surprised when I got your text back. I was like, is he serious? Is he actually?
This deck is beautiful. I don't understand. People think like it's a meme or it's a silly deck or something. This deck is on this short list for me. Like I have like a short list of decks that like I look at them and I just say I wish I made that deck, right? Like, or like this deck has something about it that is just beyond my capabilities. Like the example I always use is there was this like a few years ago, like around maybe 2013 or something, 2012, that Andrew Cuneo and Reed Duke and Sam Black were like kept make one of them or two of them would always make top 8 with this like black, blue, green standard deck with like Thragtusk in it. But it like killed with what's the name of that land, Lanny, that like millstones people? It's like a land that mills you, right? And they just had one in their deck, and then they just like used Farseek to get the mana to use it because it was like off color. And I was just like, I just would never have figured this out. This is the coolest thing ever. It's like, and I look at this deck and like this conversation that we had where I'm like, I know this is a stupid question because you don't want to do this, but why would you ever have, what's the name of it? The 3/4 for 5 Sandbar Serpent.
Yeah.
Like, why is Sandbar Serpent better than Barkhide Mauler? And then like we had this conversation and I'm like, the scales came off my eyes and I'm like, this thing is ridiculously well built. It's so good.
Mike couldn't even figure it out, or he couldn't explain it to me, because then we started playing, and he was like, check out this. So I crushed him, by the way. So part of the reason I think why he didn't want to play the deck at Lobstercon is that Mike has this heuristic, which he doesn't bring a deck to a tournament that can't beat the deck that I'm bringing to the tournament. So he knew I was going to bring Parfait. My Parfait list has Triple Duress and Light and Tutor for Crypt game 1, and then game 2 has 4 Meddling Mage. And I was like, I'll literally never lose because you're going to mulligan Frustrator, I'm going to mulligan the Meddling Mage, and then we'll see who wins.
And then Lanny also has Mana Leak.
Yeah,
Seal of Cleansing.
I have some random like crazy stuff. But so Mike was kind of off it at that point, but he was like, "Oh, how cool is this sideboard plan?" He's like, "Twilight's Call, it's so cool." And I was just like, "How? Like, why not Living Death?" And he was like, "Well, Twilight's Call you can cast in an instant." And I was like, "When are you gonna ever have eight mana?" And Mike didn't even get around to being like, "Well, you Songs of the Damned to cast the Twilight's Call at instant speed on your Instep, and that's what's crazy about it." And then so it's Fluctuator, or specifically Flintuator as the people are calling it, is like an onion. It has layers, and it's just incredible stuff. And it was really cool because I got to watch Osip execute that plan. He was playing against Mono Blue Tide, against one of our local guys, and
Eddie the Intern. Yes,
indeed, Eddie the Intern, shout out, friend of the podcast. and he had all his lands in play, and he was just kind of like, working towards the Twilight's Call line. So I thought that was.
Is that Eddie Hawk?
That sounds like his last name.
Yeah, Flint played him in round 1 of.
Yeah.
Nice.
Played in round 1. Yeah.
And he remembered his last name.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, he is a Stanford PhD. He's not like.
I don't think. Well, I guess. Well, you're like a research. You don't have to remember like students' names. Do you have students?
No.
Yeah.
I don't have students. No.
You don't have students?
No, I'm in
It's a
school of
research.
medicine, so I'll research.
Yeah. Fun fact about Flint: he's not obliged to remember people's names, and he does it anyways. This is why he's the prince.
Well,
he knows the names of his subjects, first and last.
To be fair, I did have to ask a couple of people. Things got kind of hazy with.
Well, you were against Eddie in round 1, so you're fully armored still at that point, maybe.
Nothing but croissant and coffee flowing through my veins at that point.
That is what we call a New York breakfast.
I can't believe you eat carbs.
I love that.
And he looks so good.
But he's also
He's so thin and handsome, and he eats carbohydrates.
and he's tall but people don't know this. Flint was a CrossFit coach for like 7 years also, right?
Well, in a former life, a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, he's a cheater. He's like some sort of weird polymath. He broke all like 6 different formats.
Fair enough.
One of them is Premodern.
Fair enough. Well, next subject. What do we want to move on to?
Flint, what's your favorite deck you ever played?
Oh, man. My favorite deck that I've ever played. Probably the Legacy Lands deck circa 2012 maybe. The one that, like the old school version that ran Nantuko Monastery and Tabernacle and everything,
Yeah.
like pre-Dark Depths. I loved that deck.
But that deck still have a crop rotation?
Yeah.
Flint, do you were you like a big Legacy player in the 2000s?
I played Old Extended, and then I played Legacy, but I played in like Wednesday night Legacy nights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I never played in.
Well, no, there was no other. Yeah, there was no other Legacy. You just had to have it locally. I just asked because one of my weird core memories is I remember when somebody went ahead and posted the forum posts on mtgthesource.com, and it's like, I got a new deck. It's called 48 lands or something, or 42 or 51.
42.
Yeah, 42 lands. It's like it's called 42 lands. You remember that?
Yep.
I just remember, yeah, and I was like, what? And I was like, so cool. And that's got to be the first time that deck existed. Is just like some guy who's just like, yeah, I got a deck for you. It's called 42 lands. Check it out. And today Legacy Lands is still a deck that exists. So
It's
shout
just
out
called
to that
lands now, right? They
it's
dropped
lands.
the 42.
guy. Yeah,
That's my favorite deck that I ever played. But my favorite deck of all time is Frostbloom, because that's the deck that made me fall in love with combo, and like that's my favorite style of deck to play, and I love everything about it.
You love how it goes off and then just fizzles about like 15% of the time.
It keeps it interesting. It keeps it exciting,
It's like,
right?
Yeah.
like, I mean, I played Frostbloom in a lot of tournaments back in like 1998, and I think the style of how I played Replenish is actually informed by playing Frostbloom, right? So like I remember like I played Adrian Sullivan once, like I think at Origins, and he just had a bunch of land, I had a bunch of land, and I just cast Natural Balance. He just like looked at it, and he looks at me, he looks at it, and he's like, that does nothing. But actually what it did was both of us just got triple stone rained.
Yeah.
But I converted a bunch of lands, so we both got stone rained, but I kept my blue lands. Right? And so that was cool. So like this like progression of just like you're playing against a permission deck, just like one spelling them until something gets through, and then, kicking them down the stairs. I actually, that style of Replenish just comes from 1998 summer playing Frostbloom. But that deck, rules were different. You had to be able to win on 0 life, right? So that was different. What was the kill card? was Drain Life the
Drain
card
Life
in that deck?
Yeah, it's Drain Life. Yeah,
You love Drain Life combo decks.
I'd say, and in a lot of ways, Fluctuator is kind of like a callback to Frost Bloom, because Fluctuator can fizzle, especially after you board in all those other cards. Like, you're not going to win on the spot after you sideboard against the control decks. You just have too many non-cyclers in your deck, and you have to sculpt it. You got to know when to go for it. If they have a Crypt in play, like, when do you start to cycle? When do you not? When do you, like, if you have the pedal, do you cast the pedal first before you start to cycle, right? Do you tip them off? Like, there are all these little, like, ways that you can fail with Fluctuator that I think reminds me of the Frost Bloom deck, where it's like, okay, I got to leave how much blue mana in my pool for the prosperity? I know I can exile cards to cast the Infernal Contract, but I have to be able to hit that prosperity. Like, it's an interesting kind of similarity. And going back to what you're saying, Mike, about, playing cards one by one, like, that's how I beat the Landstill deck in the quarterfinals, right? It's like, well, okay. So the story is, we get our pairings, and I'm like, oh, that's one of, like, the New York Duress crew or whatever. Like, I'm pretty sure, it was against Jay McGowan, I believe. And I was like, oh, he's on Landstill. And I was like, okay. And so I'm walking over, I get my beer with Jens, and I'm walking over to the table. And
you're like, tough one. Okay, let's crack another beer.
Yeah. So I stayed true to what I was there to do. And so I turned to Jens and I was like, here's how this is going to play out. Game 1, I'm just going to play out all my creatures and I'm going to attack and I'm going to beat him down. And then games 2 and 3, I'm going to board in the Twilight's Call tech, and then I'm going to get him in at least one of those 2 games, and he's not going to see it coming. And Jens is like, okay, we'll see about that. And that's exactly what I did. I played out my Merfolk, my Sandbar Merfolk. I played out my shitty 2/3s for 4. I played my 7 mana 4/4 flyer, which is a hell of a beating against the Landstill deck. Like,
he just didn't have stance. I don't understand. Like, the Landstill deck can stop 2/1s for 1, 4/4s, 5/5s for 4, but you're getting him with a 4/4 for 7. What? This is crazy to me.
Yeah, and in hindsight, to his credit, like, I'm sure Jay was nervous and had, there were a lot of people watching and stuff, but had he just Death Bolt my 1 blue mana source, the game would have gone way differently. Like, every turn, I'm just like, don't look at his Dust Bowl. Don't look at his Dust Bowl. Don't look at his Dust Bowl.
Yeah,
like,
that's just a waste. That's just a waste. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Flint, I asked Lanny the same question last week after Lobstercon. Where did you get your table game? Like, you have such a good table game. 6 beers in, you still have a really good table game. The average player would just never occur to them to be like, don't look at his Dust Bowl. And like the sum total of the stuff that you know how to do at the table is really impressive for somebody who doesn't have a background in, kind of large, high stakes, high stress tournaments.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and walk back. Mike, can you just give us a quick explanation of, like, what table game is? What are good examples of it? And why J&M or JMM is the best table game of all time?
Okay. So a table game is the way that you compose, the way that you present yourself, the way that you compose yourself, the way that you execute at the table, right? So a lot of players are technically skilled, right? So there was a generation of players prior to the current generation who were extraordinarily technically skilled because they grew up on Moto, not Arena, on Moto. So Moto taught them the rules, and the players on Moto are more serious than the players on Arena. So these guys are just like grinding Moto tournaments, became very technically skilled, right? But they would qualify for the Pro Tour, they come to the Pro Tour, and they would potentially just be lost because they didn't have table game, right?
Right.
So
this is actually a mirror to the story of how you and I met, because I came to a PTQ and I played you against round 1, and I'd been a strictly online player basically, and I just didn't know how to count how many lands you had. Like, I was already overwhelmed by having to keep track of, like, life totals and, like, even hold the cards in my hand, because, like, when you play digital Magic, they're just like, everything's displayed for you and everything's easy.
So like, everything matters at the table. And it increasingly matters the better your opponent is. That's the thing. So, like, the apex of, like, playing against somebody at the table is John Finkel, right? John Finkel, if you ask him so you ask, like, 3 different players why they're the best, right? Like, John Finkel is the best because he notices everything, right? He notices everything. He's like, you pay attention. He's like, I pay attention. That's why I win the most, right? Versus, like, PV is like, why are you so good? He's like, I never lose focus, right? So at the table, you have all these different things, but if you're playing digitally, everything's getting prompted for you. You can't forget your upkeeps, right? Like, things like that, right? So I'm always impressed by people who have really good table game, and a table game is different from technical play, right? So Lanny had a really good table game last Saturday, and he still, he put his cards on top of his library when he scroll racked once, right? Like you can make mistakes, right? The technical in-game mistakes are different from having great table game. I'll give you a really easily illustratable example, and then I'll talk about the player who has the best table game of all time, right? So a really easy example is Brad Nelson. So the first time I ever played against Brad Nelson was like in a fun draft with like Gavin Bear. He had a U.S. Nationals once. Brad Nelson is big. He's a big guy, right? Brad Nelson uses his physicality at the table. He encompasses the space in a way that like you can't miss him, right? And he like crowds. He's like not doing anything. It's not wrong. I'm putting wrong in quotes, right? He's not doing anything wrong. Just encompasses the space, right? Like, and he gets like plus 5% on every single match he ever sits at because he's just a big guy. And it's not just, there's other guys who are big who can't use their body this way. Brad actually, I don't know if this is true. I heard this was true, but it was from a good source, right? Like after Brad like actually got onto the Pro Tour and was like sort of, like going to be a gravy trainer, and he went from this guy who had just won a Pizza Q and did well in the Pro Tour once to a guy who was going to be like ultimately the greatest Sander player of all time. Brad actually trained in table game, right? So he got like a coach to teach him how to hold his body better, right? So at the table, right? To like work on his physical. It's really important and it's really powerful, right? So a lot of the time people are like, they have no clue what's going on. They look at a deck, they're like, I don't understand. The best example is this one we joke about all the time. It's like half the guys at F&M think that they're one mana screw away from being as good as John Finkel, right? Like that is just not true, right? But that's what they think. It's like, oh, I just get mana screwed. That's what plays. You lose for a lot of reasons, buddy, and you don't even know the reasons, right? The greatest table game anyone has ever seen, it belongs to Jan-Marit Merkel, right? So Jan-Marit Merkel, I think he was 17 years old when he won. I can't remember which Pro Tour. It was a Pro Tour in Europe. He beat eventual Pro Tour Hall of Famer Willie Edel in the finals. And the joke is Jan-Marit Merkel won that Pro Tour 0-5. So Edel had an all-time great draft deck. Merkel did not. Merkel's not a big guy. It's a 17-year-old kid, right? And he owned the red zone. Like when his cards were untapped, they were just in the red zone. They were just in the middle where the red zone was. And Edel just let him keep doing it, right? So I had this argument with like a pretty good Pro Tour player, and I'm like, no, I think that you're really underrating the value of mental game, and I think it like actually decides a lot of matches. What you're saying is ridiculous. I'm like, just click this video, watch this. Calls me back an hour later. He's just like, whatever you say is right. And he's just like, no one has ever played a match of Magic like Jan-Marit Merkel that day, right? So the thing is that in paper Magic, people will have a tendency to make different kinds of mistakes than they make online, right? So the mistakes that I make online, for example, are usually something like a misclick, right? Sometimes you misclick in paper and you're just like, oh, I misclicked, right? But a misclick is a very apt thing that you might do in digital Magic as a mistake, but you never miss a trigger. You can't. The triggers are done for you, right? Like what Lanny was saying, just like, oh, I don't have to count this thing. The count is for me. I can look at the icon to see how many cards my opponent has in hand.
Right.
Like Arena does things like track which cards you've seen in your opponent's hand, right? So all kinds of stuff that I used to do to get edge, like over the like play all lands of the same type or something like that, just irrelevant in digital, right? These are skills that are valuable that win you games in paper. But the kind of mistakes that you make in paper, you just can't even make in
digital Magic.
In digital Magic, and most of the time they relate to losing your frame at the table, right? Like if somebody asked you what the right play was, you would be able to tell them, but you lost your frame at the table because you don't have a good table game. A really good example is Bob Maher Jr. against Brian Davis in the finals of Pro Tour Chicago 99, right? Yeah. So Davis casts a lethal drain life or corrupt on Bob. Bob doesn't have a counterspell. Bob activates his treetop village and swords to plowshares to just not die, and then Davis concedes the game. What? Your corrupt just resolved, or you just draw 6 cards, right? You have necropotence to play, but he just concedes the game, right? Like Like you wouldn't, if this were a
Yeah.
game of Moto, like you wouldn't just hit the concede button there, right?
Right.
That is like like it's like, why would you do this, right? The only reason you would do this is because something broke. It's something that broke at the table for you, right? You did not just make a technical mistake, right? You know, you were displaced somehow, and that was the result. So when I say like you have a really good table game, I'm extrapolating from something Mike Turian once told me. So Mike Turian, before he went to go work at WotC, won 2 limited pro tours. You know, he retired in the early 2000s, right? Because he'd been working at WotC for about 20 years at this point, right? I think he's a Hall of Famer now, and he was widely considered both the best beatdown player and the best limited player of all time at the point of his retirement. He told me, I've never played a perfect game of Magic. And I'm like, that's impossible, right? You're one of the best players of all time, best beatdown player of all time, and best limited player of all time at this point, right? So, you know, other people have gotten good at Magic also. He's like, no, I held my head wrong. I looked at something wrong, right? I didn't look at something long enough, right? And one of the things Turian told me was like, in the same situation, give the exact same fact pattern. Your opponent has the same number of cards. You have the same number of cards. You have a creature. You have a 2/2 creature. They have like a 2/3 creature, a 3/3 creature. He says the frequency with which you attack into their bigger creature is not 0. He's just like you said you don't always attack into it. You don't never attack into it. You have to attack into it when you don't have it sometimes, and be willing to sacrifice the creature if they bite. So it's because if you don't, you are now too predictable. And like, ask any of these Zoomers who are like insane that like came up from Arena. That sentence would never occur to them. It says, he says, you have to attack sometimes when you don't have it. You can't never attack. You can't always attack. All 3 of those forks are wrong. And the art is knowing when the right time to attack is. And that is not explainable to somebody. I just described the pattern to you, right? But your ability to identify that at the table is only dictated by your ability to read the opponent's table game. And so like it's like crazy to me, right? And so if somebody's like, oh, how do you get to be the best? How do you get to be in the Hall of Fame? How do you get to win a Pro Tour? How about 2 Pro Tours, right? Like how do you get to do that? Play Magic like that. That's how you do that, right? And so both of you have very good table games. And like when I lost to Flint last year, I just watched Flint play. I just watched him play all day, right? Flint's easy to look at. I was watching, and I would just come back and I'm like telling my friends, I'm like, this dude is sick at mulligans. He is as disciplined at mulligans as anyone I've ever seen, right? And I've played with the best players of all time for 20 years, right? Like sick at mulligans. And like, I don't know if I noticed like the rest of your table game last year, but like the thing you're describing right now is so advanced at Magic. Like it's super advanced. And I mean, part of it is like, it matters more the better your opponents are, right? So, you know, 6 beers in, if both guys are 6 beers in, I don't know how much it matters.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But, like,
of course, the
if
delta.
you're playing for blood, it would matter a lot.
Yeah, the delta between your and opponents is crazy. But yeah, I mean, Mike was pretty effusive about your win last year, and I think that a lot of outsiders to Premodern, had that question, which is like, how good is this guy? And Mike was telling people, is like, look, I've seen good players my whole life, and Flint Espil's a great player. And yeah, based on your background, it sounds like you're kind of just like F&M end boss type, like never grinded Grand Prix, never grinded online. Yeah. What's like, I mean, does this resonate with you at all? Or are you just like, oh, I conned
I just want to know where you got the tip. Say you have it, right? I would like to shop at that store. Or in the words of the great Brian Hacker, whatever church this guy worships at, that's my God now.
I love it. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe part of it's just like why I got into the profession that I'm in, right? So I'm a psychologist by training. I'm a clinical psychologist. I do a lot of research at Stanford, but I'm also trained as a therapist and as an assessor. And so like in a lot of ways, it's my job to, assess people and provide differential diagnoses about things. And I'm a hardcore behaviorist as well. I have a minor in behavior analysis. And so it's kind of like I've always I've never been much of a talker and more of an observer. I'm a social guy, but when I first meet you, I probably won't talk as much. And once we get to know each other, then maybe I won't shut up. But I do a lot of observing at first. Even Mike, when you and I were hanging out for the first time, I was like kind of there, and we were talking, but I was probably still a little like shy,
Dude,
it's only the second time that we met.
All I ever wanted, I was just like, I just wanted to seem cool. I was just like, Flint's like one of the coolest match players. He's gonna come visit. I'm like, I just need to seem cool, right? So I did everything I could to seem cool. Well, we jumped those millennials. We jumped an F ton of millennials because we were on the list.
We did, and I think.
And Flint's observation was, Mike appears to think it's very important to seem cool right now.
I just told however many listeners we have that was my objective. So.
Yes. But going back to it, that's just kind of what I do. And if you watch me play, like a lot of people will like shuffle their cards in their hand over and over and over again, right? And look at their cards and like touch their lands or whatever. And sometimes people will, fake, it's like the classic, okay, I'm going to go to change my life total now because I know you're going to attack, right? Exactly, the pen trick. So and I've seen those videos, I've read those articles and stuff, but when I play, a lot of times I'll just set my hand down and just watch the opponent and just kind of see how they play and what they do and see how consistent they are or inconsistent they are. And
we're going to need to get a poker game set up next time you're in town.
I don't really know how to play poker. I know the basic rules, but I don't know
all the better for me.
Yeah, right.
Well, so
welcome in, sucker.
When Flint beat me at Lobstercon last year, right? In the top 4, he told me later that he read me for no swords to plowshares because I had snap kept a hand.
Yeah, I didn't.
But I had snap. Yeah, I had snap kept a hand in the Swiss that didn't have swords to plowshares, and he just assumed I had it, so he didn't do anything, right? And then I ended up locking him out with the bands, right? And then he's just like, oh shoot, this guy will keep a. He's like, so I snap kept again.
Yeah, he
doesn't have swords to plowshares. Lotus pedal.
Yeah, you know about range.
What do you got?
Yeah, Flint, you know what we talk about when we talk about ranges?
No.
Okay, so I am not like an expert in this, but basically in poker, your range is the range of hands that you're willing to bet on.
Okay.
And so you can have if you're a you can have a wide range or a tight range.
So a loose player or a tight player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's loose.
And you read Mike for having a loose range and totally capitalized on it. That's just the coolest thing ever. Like that.
Well, and to be fair, I win game 1, so I'm playing with house money in game 2 as well. So,
but okay. Listen, this is once again a great poker strategy because you had an advantage in equity. You're up that game. You're able to open up your range. So you double down, right? Because you have
now you're blackjack. You switched from poker to blackjack.
Okay, fair enough. Listeners by now, we're only one episode into the Spike Colony podcast, should know that I love gambling and I will use all gambling analogies, but this is just so cool. So like you're saying, you're playing with house money, like you're able to make a very risky bet against the no source of plowshares because you have effectively what would be like this sort of chip advantage. Like you already have a huge lead, and so you're able to loosened your range, right? Normally you wouldn't keep a hand that just folds to source of plowshares.
No, he would have kept the hand, but maybe he doesn't jam there.
Yeah, exactly.
Jammed.
Or his play line is different. But the combination of your starting advantage of having that game win, blended with your read on Michael's range, just that the end result, like sending it, like again, that's kind of like masterful stuff that you don't necessarily get when you're not looking at your opponent over the table and just making observations like you do. So, that's really cool. I don't think I've ever really even thought about playing Magic that way. Like Mike was complimenting my table game, and I really only just think about my presence at the table similarly to how you would be at a poker table, which is just like every turn, just draw your cards the same way, like do the same thing, like make the same announcements, like just don't change anything about what you're doing so your opponent can't get a read. but I'm never trying to read my opponents that hard. And then I'll sometimes like touch my lands if my opponent goes for something and thinks I have a counter spell.
Yeah.
But like aside from that, I don't really send the signals.
You don't try to lull your opponents to a false sense of comfort by being super gregarious and friendly. That's not part of your game.
Well, that's a good point too. I mean, I in general I like to think of myself as a pretty friendly person, and I did some things like to embrace the meme in the tournament that may have also given me a bit of an edge in terms of the mental game, right? Like, no sleeves, no playmat, no pen and paper, right? Like every single opponent that I played kept track of my life total for me, and so I could just ask them like, "Hey, what am I at? Am I dead yet? Like, am I still like against the Goblins player?" I remember being like, "So wait a minute, am I dead?"
Did you have to buy that expert hat for the event? That was part.
So I bought the expert hat in the fall sometime. Someone on one of the collectibles page like posted that they had like 5 or 6 of them, and I was like, that is the greatest hat ever. Like I'm gonna buy one of those. And then I decided to wear it, to sort of embrace the meme about, I don't know, a month later when I decided what deck I was gonna play.
For background for the listeners, this is a hat that is emblazoned with the expert symbol that's found on old Magic expansion booster packs.
And then it's got like the Magic card back on it and the mana symbols. It's like very, very, very MTG. And but the other thing too, that I didn't really think about is, that all of those things are going to tilt people a little bit. And so like in the quarterfinals, for example, when I was playing against Jay, he would swing with a Mishra's Factory or whatever, and I would ask him what I'm at, or I'd ask him what he's at, and then I'm counting, in my head, I'm counting the number of swords, and the number of Wrath of Gods, and then I'm confirming, I'm like, okay, he's cast this many counter spells, this many Wrath of Gods, this many swords, like, at what point am I going to try to like swing for the win? When he casts his Factor Fictions, I'm thinking, what cards do I really want him to take versus not? And so, I think he's going to think that the Fairy Conclave is really good, but it's actually really not. And so I'm going to put that in like, a pile with actually fewer cards. And he would, he scooped up that, pile in a heartbeat.
Oh my God.
Eventually I had like the Expunge, that had been in my hand. And so when he activated his Conclave to block, to save his life, I expunged it and won. So it's like just kind of thinking through those little lines. And at the same time, giving him more tasks than he might otherwise have when all of a sudden he's keeping track of my life total and he knows.
All right. Well, I'll stop you right there.
It's just like
so Flint's playing an extraordinarily sophisticated game while playing a character, right? He's like playing a character and playing a sophisticated game, and his opponents are doing all the work for him.
All right, Flint.
Yeah.
Next year, you do have to keep track of your life total.
I will.
It's worth clarifying for the people out there who want to emulate our prints. You are expected in a tournament to keep track of your own life total. And trust me, Flint, if you sat down across
the fun police.
No. If Flint sat down across from me in a win-in match and he's like, "You got my life totals," I'd be like, "No." I'd be like, "Go find a pen and paper." Like,
Annie is so serious.
Then I would ask to borrow.
Yeah, this is famously the LSV move. LSV doesn't bring dice, paper, pen, or tokens to a tournament, and he just borrows it. And this last Pro Tour was the first Pro Tour that he stopped doing that because it started bordering on the line of. I mean, this I think there's some like REL rules, yeah. Oh, I mean, what I normally do is actually, if my opponent's just like, "Oh, cool," because I was using my phone, because my life total this tournament was going way above 20. Normally, I use dice or pen and pad, but if my opponent's like, "Oh, you got both our life totals, that we're good," and I was like, "No, like I need you to keep track of life totals as well, so that we can resolve any discrepancies."
And I think you're right. And I did it because I thought it would be funny.
Yeah, no, it's
like
funny.
Halfway through, realized like I'm actually putting more of a burden on my opponents, and I actually kind of felt bad about it.
And then you weaponized it, and then you proceeded to weaponize
awesome.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome. This is the Spike colony, not the Softies colony, right? This is fantastic.
This is a warning from the head judge. Please keep track.
Head Judge Lanny.
No. But the thing that I was going to explode because this Factor Fiction gameplay is is masterful. The idea that you would take a card that you know is low value, that you have the read that your opponent's going to value more, put it in the smaller pile to just double the equity you get on that factor fiction. You know, one of the things is like, this is why Premodern is great, is we have like these crazy cards like Factor Fiction and Cabal Therapy that are playable. And we get to sort of, again, exacerbate the sort of skill advantage that we have on our opponents when given the opportunity. Like, it just blows my mind hearing this. Like, Mike yells at me every single time I split a Factor Fiction. And I think that I'm a pretty good fact splitter, but you know, you're just on an entirely different plane. So, you know, incredible stuff. And once again, if you don't think that demonstrably great Magic players are great, like, I mean, Flint, that's just like a clear example of something that you're doing like 10 beers deep that other players don't think about.
It was a few at that point.
I think this is actually a great thing to talk about, Lanny, because one of the awesome features about Premodern is that Factor Fiction is legal, and it was in the winning deck, right? It's a card that's played in anything else but land still, but it's at least played in land still, right? Is it played in other decks?
Yeah,
I played it in some other decks.
Yeah, it's in your replenish sideboard.
Oh yeah, I played it replenish. You're right.
Yeah.
But then,
and then I went and replaced it. Yeah, but no, yeah, and you can play it in Psychotog. You can play it in truly any deck that taps for blue mana.
You won a tournament with Psychotog last year? Did you get Factor Fiction?
I didn't, but that was the Grotog deck, so it's a little lower curve.
So I think that one thing that you can do with your friends when you're testing is to just split Factor Fictions, and then so figure out how Factor Fiction should be split. And
say, hey, bro, you want to split Factor Fictions tonight?
I'm
stay up all night splitting.
I'm actually not kidding.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not.
We know.
I just want to text the playtest group. It's like, yo, tonight Factor Fiction splits.
Pog would be in a second. You know that, right? Like, you're just like in.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and then you would proceed to bully him over splitting every single fact wrong, but.
No, he would get it right over time, right? He'd just understand the paradigms.
That's true.
But like, splitting Factor Fictions is a really awesome skill. And so like, that's exactly like what Turian was saying, right? About attacking with the 2/2 into the 2/3 or the 3/3. Like, you don't, even the same 5 cards, you don't split them the same way in 2 different games, right? Like, it's like hyper contextual. It's like, what do you think your opponent's going to value? What do you think your opponent's paradigm is? You know, what's their like operating system for how they pick a pile? Like, some people just always take the bigger pile, right? It's like 3/2. All right, take the bigger pile, right? So I not almost always. That's an overgeneralization, but I probably split Factor Fiction's lands against spells 40% of the time. Just lands against spells, then see what they'll do. Because the thing is, like, greedy people will take like a three spell hand, 3 spell fact that has like 2 counter spells in it, and then like ignore the two land, and then are wondering why they can't cast their counter spells that they just drew 2 turns later when they've missed their land drop. So, but it depends. You know, obviously you don't want to give them a lot of counter spells to a lot of land already.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
no, this is just like I said, it's just the coolest thing ever. Like, that Turian note is just so true, and that's something that I keep with me. It's just like, you know, you can always optimize, and you can optimize in ways that you don't like you're not always aware of. So first you got to know what your mistakes are, and then you got to start correcting them.
Can I tell you one of my favorite Premodern Factor Fiction splits ever?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was playing.
Tell me your favorite 10. Let's actually, I'm going to pull out some cards. Let's do Factor Fiction splits right now.
Oh God. So good for an audio medium. So I was playing like an early version of that Pyrostatic Oath deck I built, that red green, you know, Bloodfire Colossus deck. Because I wanted to play Prison, but I wanted to get the games over with fast. So that was the impetus for that deck. And the original version had Black Vice in the main deck, because it's just this idea that I'm going to play Pyrostatic Pillar, but I'm also going to run out Black Vices. So if you decide to just wait, you're going to pay for it. And I remember I had a Black Vice in play, and I think my opponent was on, what was he on? 12 life. And during my end step, he has 7 in his hand, and he casts a Factor Fiction. And I look, and I have a Fire Blast in my hand, and I'm looking at, you know, like, how many do you have? You got 7? He's like, yep. And I'm like, all right, 0-5. and he's about to scoop up the 5, and he thinks about it for a second because he's just dead, right? If he takes the 5 cards, he's gonna have 12 cards in his hand during his upkeep, right? So he's gonna take 8 damage. And I'm gonna fire blast him. I'm gonna kill him in his upkeep. And so he looks at it.
0.
He looks at it, and he's like, "I'll take the pile with 0."
So I had a similar situation at a meetup. Although I think the meetup that you came to New York that same weekend when we, where would we go? We went to Elsewhere in Brooklyn and ate pizza and whatever else.
Shout out Elsewhere.
Yeah. You went to Elsewhere like last weekend, right?
Me? No.
Yeah.
But I know of Elsewhere. Elsewhere
right,
is a fixture of nightlife in Bushwick, which, it's just a cool part of town. It's incredible Mike at his age is listening. So
what?
A true testament to how hard
the lines at dance parties, Lanny.
I know. I heard. And
right, so
I was like, this guy is cool.
And choosing the wrong deck as a result. Anyway, so did I play Rift that night? I think I did.
Because you and Jeff drew on in the Rift.
Yeah. So I'm playing against blue-white land still, and it was just like the easiest matchup on earth for Rift, right? You can just basically never lose. So you just factor victors, and I'm like, you split and then take whatever pile you want. That was that's what I said.
He was like,
he's just like
2-3,
and he's just like, huh? And I'm like, well, there's just no way you can win.
Wow.
Like, look at the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Putting an entirely new spin on end of turn factor fiction, you win. Just end of turn factor fiction.
I said, you split it and then you take whatever pile you want. So, so that was the thing that I did.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but I don't think it's an automatic matchup anymore because I think people are going to play Selden's version, which has Phyrexian Furnace in the main deck, and now you can't just automatically beat the crap out of Landstill with the Turtle Dragon anymore. They used to be able to punish you 0. You're just like, I'm just going to draw 2 cards a turn, never miss a land drop, cast a bigger decree than you. That's you never even have to cast a spell.
Yeah, guess we have to update our testing.
So I don't know how to solve that. It might not be solvable, which means that maybe Rift is not going to be. I think Rift might not have already been playable. But like, I really want it to be the best, so I'm trying to get land tax banned because I feel like when land tax gets banned, Rift is going to be the best. But now, if these guys are going to play main deck Phyrexian Furnace, no more fun. That was one of our best matchups.
This is a great segue into, I think, what should be our final topic. Looking forward, Flint, we know that you are going to head up to Misty Mountain Games in Madison, Wisconsin on July 1st. Michael and I are, of course, considering joining you, real life permitting. What are you thinking? We're going up there. We're going to be fighting Sam Black and, of course, Will Hurst, who's technically the champion. But
who's Will Hurst?
Shout out Will Hurst and I Got Questions podcast. The current reigning champion.
I also did the I Got Questions podcast last month. But it's funny to say who's Will Hurst.
Yeah, Will Hurst.
Everybody listening to this podcast knows who Will Hurst is.
Yeah, Will Hurst.
And I'm pretending I don't know who he is, despite the fact that I was on his podcast.
We love Will, and he's just. I would say he's on a heater, but man's always on a heater. And of course, you guys share tech about Red. But anyways, what do we think? I mean, tournament a month from now, but also just like in Premodern in general, it's like, where do we want to go next?
A Fluctuator Hermit Druid hybrid, obviously. That's the.
Oh, you don't have any non-basic lands.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Wait, hold on. What if you just Hermit Druided a bunch of creatures into your graveyard and then cast Songs of the Damned? That's an forget about the actual Fluctuator. What if you just did that and then you just killed them with the Drain Life, right? Is there something we can operate from the graveyard? You could just do it with Croson Reclamation.
Yeah, you could.
Is it better than reanimating a creature though?
It doesn't work, Mike, because you need Drain Life and Songs of the Damned in your hand. So you can't reclaim one or the other, and you can't wait two turns to win.
Yeah, I think it's too cute, but it would be sweet. It would be super sweet. I don't know what I'm going to play in Madison. Actually, I was actually hoping to tap into your inner cabal or your inner circle or whatever. I mean, to sort of figure out a deck because I don't know what I'm going to play. I think there's going to be a lot of blue there for what it's worth. Blue and blue.
Yeah, how good do you think the average player is going to be? So I think we got stuff right and wrong. I mean, first of all, Lanny did great. So, I mean, Lanny was always knew what he wanted to do. But I ended up playing the deck I played because I didn't think it was the best deck. I thought it was the best deck contextually because it's good against Lanny, A. And then B.
The most important context.
Yeah.
B, like it's super good against 12-12. But in the abstract, blue-white 12-12 is the best deck, I think, without reservation. I just didn't want to play it because I thought I'd play against players like Selden like in this latter half of the day, which would have also been true anyway, right? So, and if you're playing land still and you just have like 4 Meddling Mage, 4 Plow, 4 Disenchant / Seal, you just can never lose to 12-12 decks, which Selden proved repeatedly.
Yeah, I love the blue-white Dreadnought deck. I mean, I think that if I were trying to take Lobstercon super seriously, that's probably the deck that I would have picked.
But you wouldn't have been afraid of... So the thing I was literally afraid of is, like, I play Lanny in, like, round 6, and I have, like, almost no chance of winning.
I couldn't beat Itai. Like, Itai... This is the thing, the blue-white... Like, I was kind of...
so good that...
No, I was a coward. Like, I picked Parfait because the blue-white Dreadnought deck can lose to Goblins and Elves, but it's, like, it's still close. And I picked Parfait because it was going to slam the door on so many matchups, and it was going to be just deck advantage because people don't know how to play against land tax still, and they refuse to learn. But the reason why I handed Itai that, I mean, obviously Itai wanted to play it, but when I gave it to him, I was just like, this is probably the deck that I should be playing, especially because Landstill was on the upswing, and we had a plan for Landstill. It didn't pan out in the finals for Itai, but, you know, Fran's record...
Or in the Swiss.
Yeah, or in the Swiss, but the same opponent. It's just not exactly fair. But, you know, Fran's record against Landstill was really good, and I also felt pretty strong about the Landstill matchup for Blue Eye Knot, and also teaser, we were trying to get together a grudge match of champion Brian Selden versus both Francisco and myself to really settle this one, because I was just bullish on all of Blue Eye Dreadnought's matchups. And
how come our testing isn't good enough? I never lose this matchup. It doesn't count? Doesn't count when I win?
Mike, Brian Selden's the champion.
Yeah, but you don't need to settle the matchup. I said this to Fran in the Discord. This matchup is settled.
Mike, you and I get to commentate this, okay? But we're putting Brian in the driver's seat, because here's the thing: people are gonna doubt if you lose, because they're like, well, he's not the best Landstill pilot in the country right now. But if Brian loses,
the best Landstill pilot at the table when I played against Brian.
Yeah, exactly. So it's open and shut. Listen, if whatever 5-match set, if Fran pulls it out against Brian, we'll know who the truly favored deck is. Yeah. So my conclusion basically is just like, I knew that the Blue Eye Dreadnought deck was great. I knew that it could beat just about everything in a very few truly bad matchups. Mike, your analysis leading up was just like, some guys are going to build their deck to not lose to Dreadnought, and I had always rebutted with the same thing. It's just like, some guys don't know how hard it is to beat Dreadnought, and I think Itai ultimately proved that conviction true. And he was close. He was close in the finals. Like, it was a close match, and I think if you played it 10 more times, or you gave Itai 2 more weeks of preparation, things could have gone a lot differently. So yeah.
Flint, how much time and effort do you want to put into winning Misty? That's one question I would ask.
I don't know. Let me think about it.
Like, do you really care? So the thing is, like, I think in the abstract, Blue-White Dreadnought is the best deck. But, like, last night I played Blue-Red Dreadnought, and the reason I played Blue-Red Dreadnought is 2 reasons. One, all of my Blue-White dual lands and my proper meddling mages were in the deck that I gave to Pog. So I was restricted on what I could play. But I actually wanted to play this other deck anyway. Let's just see how it worked. Because the highest earning deck at Lobstercon with an 80% win rate, that is an insane win rate, right? Over multiple players, was Blue-Red Dreadnought. So they basically only lost to Itai. Like, literally Itai.
Yep, X and Itai was their record.
Yeah, was it their record? So
I think one player might have dropped one to Rich, but yeah.
Yeah, so I played it last night, and it's interesting. Like, your comfort level is never going to be as good because you're going to have these hands that are like gush, foil, combo in your opening hand, mountain, 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 right? Like, she's like, I don't know about this one. Like, I'm kind of an inch from winning, and I'm kind of have a 3-card hand, right? Like, so you're gonna have hands like that because they don't have that, they don't have an equivalent of Flooded Strand, right? So,
Right.
but it was good. I beat Itai, so I did better than either of the blue-red players at Lobstercon did. I beat Pog playing land still, and the deck has different angles, right? So they just don't expect you to 12 them with the fling.
With the fling.
Yep.
Yeah, like
Can we just play City of Brass? I mean, come on.
I don't know, man. The problem is that it still has a Days Gush foil engine, so you can't just
City of Brass over Mountain.
I don't know, man.
City of Brass is just better than Mountain. All right, we'll figure it out in the lab.
So
We know.
So like one of the reasons that I thought the deck was good is like Pog thought he was like invincible. He had 3 seals in play, right? And a meddling mage. On the battlefield, I just like cast a Dreadnought and flinged him, and then I just like chip shotted him with Fire Ice and Lightning Bolt from there, right? Like if you think about what are the defenses people have, they're like, I have plows, I have, seals, I have disenchants. We're like, do you have 12 more life?
Yeah.
Do you have not tapping your Flooded Strand, right? Because like deck has like 7 burn cards and like Barbarian Ring and Grim Lavamancer. So like, I actually kind of really underrated blue-red, like when I heard that it was doing well to begin with. But I looked at the numbers. It literally went X and Etai at Lobstercon, and it doesn't feel good. Blue-white feels so good, right? It's feels fantastic.
The blue-red version, do they run 3 Fire Ice or 4 Fire Ice?
The version I played last night, I think, had 3 Fire Ice. 3 Fire Ice, 4 Lightning Bolt.
Got it.
But like I took out Impulse for Sleight of Hand. They had Impulse in their deck. And this is maybe Lanny will be defending on the Impulse side.
Yeah, I heard the first episode.
But I actually used to be on Lanny's team. And then I watched Etai lose in the finals because he did not have a third land. And he had the Impulse Counterspell fork. And I was just like, not going to be me.
Ignore all the other games he won.
Yeah.
The sample size.
Not going to be
Thank you, Flint. Thank you,
Size
Flint.
of 1.
That's what I'm saying. And the reason he lost, he cast Gush that turn. It's like you can also.
Ew, no, don't.
Impulse.
Etai did great.
He did great.
A lot of things happened that turn that I would not have done.
Look, guys, just play the 19th land. All right, you can just put the 19th land in. You can run your play set of Impulse. You can play 19 lands in Blue-Red Dreadnought and play Impulse. I'm not going to stop you.
Lanny gets after me for this. This is a true story. I for the longest time in testing was just like mono blue's better. I hate blue white, and one of the main reasons was we were testing, and I couldn't foil, right, because my island was a Flooded Strand in my hand, and I ended up losing because I couldn't foil. I'm like, this deck stinks. If this were mono blue, I would have foiled and I would have won. Instead, I had this stupid non-island island. Barf.
Yep.
Then I just ignored how good it was for too long.
Yep. Ignored how good it was up until the day of the tournament and until Etai was crushing everyone, and he's like, well, I may have made an error in evaluation.
No. There's definitely chats that we have that I said I thought it was the best deck, but that I was going to play a different deck because my deck beats that.
With extraordinary caveats.
Yes.
I mean, I think, look, moving
but
forward,
I did say it.
No, I'm gonna call this out, and this is just this is the Lanny, the prepared Lanny, Coach Lanny moment. I told Mike like 5 months ago when Fran was on a heater with Blue Eye Dreadnought, and when I was on a heater with it, I told to Mike, I said, anybody who plays Mono Blue Dreadnought at LobsterCon is a fish. And I sorry, I was just right. Like Blue White Dreadnought was so much better at LobsterCon. Like Mono Blue, like barely could break good results. I mean, Dreadnought as a macro archetype was obviously better than every macro archetype and a better pick than Parfait. So it's not like I made.
Lance still had like a slightly sub 50% win rate, despite all of its wins were concentrated in Brian Selden.
Yeah.
Just like the third most popular deck and did not break 50%.
Yeah, I mean that's why my analysis was just that you chose the wrong deck and that you should listen to the Prince of Premodern when he hands you a deck.
I
and also Also, bets have rules. Like, what kind of bettors are? I'm never taking a Flint wager after this. Like, he's just gonna let me off. Where's the fun?
Yes. Sorry.
I look, man,
Sorry to
I
disappoint.
I played the Rock on day 2. What do you want from me?
Fair enough. Okay. I think that pretty much sums it up. Flint, extraordinarily awesome having you on as a guest. I kind of just wish we could just hang out and just ship you over here to New
It's
York
really
all
cool.
the time.
Like you know, like there's a lot of Magic players who you just would never hang out with. You know, like a lot of the time, like they're determined, like, "Hey guys, do we have plans afterwards?" And I want to be like, "I certainly do." But
Mike gets asked out a lot at Magic tournaments, so he has a high bar.
so I'm like, yeah, but I mean, that's like what we were saying. Like I literally just wanted to go back and like hang out with you and Hoyp and Mano and like people I just don't see all the time.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys did. That was awesome.
Yeah, versus whatever the hell else we could have been doing. Right? That was such a good. That was like I don't care that I didn't do as. I mean, I didn't do that bad, Lanny. Right? but I didn't repeat my top 8. But I was like just happy for my friends, and I definitely outthought myself. I think that's my diagnosis on me.
Yeah. I mean, look, we talked big game, but we ran out of time, honestly. Like I had stuff I wanted to figure out, you know. I had stuff that I wanted to prove, like basically Mike was like, "I'm going to play land still." And I was like, "Dude, the tournament's in 2 weeks. Like I don't have enough time to show you how bad of a choice that is because I have to play my deck."
Yeah, but the problem was my assignment from Tom was just to keep playing it in physical events, right? And I never lost a match. So what feedback should I have?
What I mean, the feedback should have like play against Lanny a lot, and then he defeats you, and like he defeats you above.
You didn't defeat me.
No, I mean like we played like but that's the thing, it was like we only played like we didn't play that very many decks, and we didn't play very many matches, and basically both you and Tom, I play with both of you guys, right? I just needed to like when you guys told me you're playing Landstill, I was like, okay, testing games of Landstill are gonna go so long, and I need to play a volume of games to put you guys above your...
deck that takes forever?
Well, no, I just needed to put you guys above your pain threshold, because this is what always happened. Mike would be like, "I got this deck," and I'm like, "Okay, cool, let's play the gauntlet." And then like he would reach his pain threshold and be like, "Okay, deck is not good, on to the next one." And like land still just happened way too late. And like our last weekend, the weekend before Lobstercon, we didn't get any testing time, and I'm just texting everyone. I was like, guys, test with me. And it was like, "Oh, we're busy. We're going to clubs that we get to skip the line at instead of playing Magic with Lanny." And I was like, "Okay, fine." Like, you know, and we just, you know, we ran out of time. So, you know, that is to say, you always run out of time. Time's a limiting factor. And yeah, like Lanny, you said, you did fine.
So great. Your deck was, I think, perfect to the 75th card. Although, I mean, even Selden was impressed by the Iridescent Angel that you didn't beat him with.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know what you're complaining about. You played good. You had a perfectly tuned deck. You know, you audibled the last. Like, what's the problem? I don't
know. I don't know. Maybe if I had Wildfire Emissary, I could have beat.
Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah.
That's
so
key.
Lanny's telling me this is what he wanted.
How deep are we going?
This is what he wanted me to play at the meetup last night. He's just like, "Look at the top 8. What deck can you not? What deck could you not beat with Rifter?" Like, and I was just like, "You, I would not beat you. Can't play Rifter." He's like, "What if you played Rifter with Wildfire?" Then I couldn't plow it.
It's true.
I'm like, you couldn't plow it.
I can't even block it with my Iridescent Angel. That's how good it is.
I can't even block it with my Acroma that's attacking you for 6.
I mean, you'll plow the Acroma. I mean, listen, just watch out. Next time you see Wildfire Emissary tear up the next tournament, you're going to know who said it out loud.
Do you have any idea how good I want that card? Like, I just want it to be good. Like, once you said it, I was like, Wildfire Emissary. It's the truth.
If you guys test it and it's good, you just let me know before Madison.
No, yeah, you're welcome to the fold. So the terms are this: in order to be in the coaching, the Lanny's coaching fold, is that
coaching fold.
There are terms.
It's just like whenever Phil Wynn like makes an outlandish statement about how good the NYC crew is, like you're a member of the NYC crew because you got coaching from me. So That's the only stipulation. You can't claim it for Stanford. You can't claim it for North California. It becomes a New York win.
Gotcha.
The other thing that you have to do to be in it is just to hang out in Brooklyn like at one time. So I think I think you've accomplished that, right? So you've been to a Dave Tao meetup and a real meetup, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's enough.
That's true.
All right, he's ours. You heard it here first. Flint, any final shout outs, anything you want to plug, any thank yous, etc.?
I didn't mention this earlier, but I actually want to give a shout out to Clifford Matheson. I don't know if you guys know him. He's bigger in the old school world than Premodern, but he actually ran the very first online Premodern monthly. He lived in the Bay here for a number of years. He's up in Seattle now. He's with the Emerald City Trolls, old school group up there. But I actually helped him test for Lobstercon, and he was trying to build this natural order deck. And so he lent me a bunch of cards on Magic Online. Like, he's the reason why I have decks on Magic Online. They're his cards that he lent me. And we just tested over and over and over again. And so I didn't really test my deck, but I played Elves, I played Goblins, I played Landstill, I played Dreadnought. And I actually learned a lot about all of those decks, which weirdly I think helped me when I was in the tournament playing Fluctuator against those decks, because I understood them on another level. So thank you to Cliff for the cards, and thank you to Cliff for the opportunity to play test in a way that I guess I didn't expect.
I think Mike thinks this sounds familiar.
Yeah. So Cliff is your Lanny. So I have a Magic Online account. I don't remember the name, we wrote it down though. And I think the password is like, this is Lanny's password or something like that, because Lanny's job is to put cards into the account for me so that I can test with them.
Yep.
And then
Samesies.
And then, but separately, when Lanny was complaining about not being able to test his Parfait deck, which was, by the way, perfect, right? Just like ended up perfect. I was just like, Lanny, you tested every deck in the gauntlet. You have the most exhaustive. I am positive you have the most exhaustive knowledge of all the decks in the format of anyone who will be there. Because it'd be impossible to me for there to be another person. I think I personally play the most physical Premodern of anyone in the world right now, right? And I play like 60% of that's with Lanny. Lanny plays like 180 additional percent with everybody online when he's not playing with.
Flint, what's Clifford's Matheson's online handle? Do we? Can I just like get rid of my barnacles and we can just let the two mans behind the thrones like just get the work done?
Do you want New York to continue to get props? Yeah, there's a whole community that you were responsible for helping to build. 21 people showed up at a new LGS last night. You can't just abandon them.
I don't know. Clifford Matheson sounds like my guy. If he's not already my guy, because I'd be playing online all the time, and if he's playing online, then
he's a good guy.
Then I probably jammed with him.
Oh man, thanks for ruining my entire system and local community point. I was like, thanks for that. That was great. I just started a podcast with this person.
No, the Spike Colony podcast is getting a new host, Clifford Matheson. Say hello. All right. Thanks everybody for listening.
My last appearance on the Spike Colony.
Yeah, it was a good run, Mike. I would also say, just really quickly, thank you to you guys for having me on. Thank you to everyone that I played at Lobstercon for being just a really good sport.
And keeping track of your life total.
Yeah, I mean, just being a really good sport. I think that like encapsulates it all, right? Like, it was silly what I was doing, but the deck is still pretty good, and it's not fun to lose on turn 3 for a lot of folks, and everyone was awesome. I had people laughing about it. At one point, Mitya, the German card salesperson who was there, he was not a believer in the deck, but then I won with Twilight's Call, and he wanted to buy my actual physical deck after that, so I made a believer out of him. He was a good sport. Thanks to Dave and Jared for running the event. And 1,000 times thanks to them. It's the coolest thing ever, right? Like, and the money goes to charity. It's like, come on, like, you can't get any cooler than that. And thanks to all the other folks out there who promote the format and make it what it is, because it's a super sweet community, and I'm glad you got to see it this year, Lanny.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I mean, just absolutely agree. And Flint, you're a huge part of that community, and we all look up to you, and we're all in awe of everything that you are. So thank you so much for joining your subjects in the kingdom of Flint Espil.
All right.
I'll give it a rest. I'll give it a rest starting now. But yeah, sincerely, thank you. Mike laughed so hard his internet died. So he's gonna he says goodbye as well. And yeah, that wraps it up. Flint Espil, top 4 in Lobstercon, and are no longer Prince, but still our friend. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.